Hello, everyone. Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. Thank you all for coming in. I thought it'd be fun to talk about other uses for whole grains besides grinding up for making flours to make breads. Because obviously there's that. But some people don't consider the fact that there's more uses for those whole grains that you either are considering putting up in food storage or already have in food storage. It doesn't have to be just for grinding into flour. And part of the reason I wanted to cover this is because some people might start stocking up on grains, but are saving money for a grain mill, especially if you're getting my grain mill, which is nearly doubled in price from when I bought it back in 2013 or however long it was ago that I bought it. You might be saving up, but then something happens and you're never able to buy that grain mill. But now you have all these whole grains. And now what are you going to do? You can use just a standard blender actually to powder the grains up, but they're never going to get as fine unless maybe you have a Vitamix with I think they have a special attachment or whatever. And I know some people use that to grind their flour or grind their grains into flour, but it's just not, like a standard blender like what I use because I'm not interested in a Vitamix since I already have a really nice grain mill. It's just never going to get it as fine. It just, it's going to be pretty coarse. But that can be a good thing. And here's the reason why. One of the things I like to do is take whatever grains. It doesn't matter. It can be rice. It can be barley. It can be wheat. It can be a mix. Whatever you want to do. And you can make your own cream of wheat, cream of white rice type cereal. It is like one of the easiest things to do by simply throwing it in your blender. And the texture you get from just a standard blender is pretty similar to the texture you're going to get, if you were to go down and buy some cream of wheat or cream of rice cereal. And you cook it up very similarly. Yeah, it's just really easy. And then you could add your butter, usually a little bit of salt, add some butter and brown sugar or maple syrup or whatever you like to throw in there. And again, it can be any grain, just like quinoa. We're not huge fans of quinoa here, so that's not one we use, but barley, whole barley, I personally think is better. Oh, I already said barley. I meant buckwheat. Well, either one of those is preferable that they're whole. I just prefer to have them whole. So I get from Azure Standard, I get my whole grains, and I now know to get the whole barley, the whole buckwheat. And anyway, any blend of any of those that you want, if you just want white rice for a cream of rice cereal, it works really great. Then you can also, another option for a breakfast, you can also cook up your whole grains like your barley, your wheat, your buckwheat, and make a more coarse cereal or more, kind of like you would oatmeal or rice. And you can eat that like cereal, like a hot cereal or even a cold cereal. You can just pour milk over it or something and whatever you want. That's what Patrick likes to do with leftover white rice, is he likes to eat it like a cold cereal and just puts milk and then a blend of cinnamon sugar on it. You can also use, like, barley is a great one to add to soups. But you can do this with any of your whole grains, just using them whole. Throw them into your soups and cook them with your, especially anything that's going to cook for a while anyway. And I don't always think to do that. I keep trying to remember to add like some barley because I have whole barley to some of my soups and I always forget. But I remember as a kid, Mom used to buy, like, I think it was the beef barley Campbell soup. And that was one of my very favorites. Loved that. Well, you can do the same thing. Just by making your beef soup and throwing some barley in there. You just got to make sure you cook it long enough and don't put too much in there because you don't, unless you want it to be mostly barley. But also, any of your whole grains can be used to make a stuffing for chicken or turkey or duck, if you like that. I make a wild rice stuffing. So I keep a wild rice blend on hand. And wild rice would be similar in cooking time, like brown rice or your whole wheat, your whole barley, and so on. The cooking time is going to be longer than white rice. But yeah, you can make a great stuffing out of any of that. You can also make side dishes that maybe you incorporate vegetables into, or maybe a stir fry type thing. You can use these things in casseroles. And what else did I write down? Oh, you could even use it as a replacement for white rice for making like a fried rice. Let's see, or, taking the cooked whole grains and sprinkling them on a salad. Some of the stuff I haven't done yet. I was just some ideas. I was kind of looking into some different ideas and I'm like, oh, these sound so good. But adding to your burritos. So every so often I'll use like leftover beans from when I make the Tar Heel beans and cornbread, and leftover beef from maybe either some that I put up canned in a canned form or dehydrated form, and then mix those together with some cheese and some Mexican type spices like, chili powder, cumin, and so on, and then make burritos out of that. But you can do a similar idea using all that if you want, but also using your whole grains, your cooked whole grains, and making a burrito or some other kind of a wrap out of that. The thing about this is just realizing that there's so many more uses for your whole grains when you're storing them than just grinding up for flour. And so, the same can be said for popcorn. You might store the popcorn because you guys like to pop the popcorn and eat it with butter and salt and whatever other spices you want to add to it. But that popcorn can also be ground up into a meal for making cornbread. So it's also multi-purpose. Using in chicken scratch. So if you have chickens, I'll use whole grains, whatever non-GMO, organic whole grains I can get from Azure Standard for a good price, and a lot of times make my own chicken scratch out of that, or your own chicken feed. I was thinking again, the casserole idea. I could see a lot of times when we do casseroles, most of us are doing some kind of pasta. Well, you could use those whole grains as a pasta replacement. So maybe you're making basically like a tuna noodle casserole. Like in my case, I'm usually using either steelhead or salmon instead of tuna. And consider using cooked whole grains. I think barley in particular would be a really good one for that. And make your casserole with the barley instead of using the pasta if you want. Or even if you're gluten-free, using your white rice instead of the pasta. Like I said, I haven't tried it, but years ago, I haven't done this in a long time. I made up my own. I need to do this again. I made up sort of a casserole kind of thing. I think I was in my late 20s or 30s, where I would take chicken, like pieces of chicken, and I'd put the rice, the uncooked rice in the bottom of the pan, put the water in there, top it with pieces of chicken, and then, I'd put whatever spices or bouillon or something in there for flavoring, and then put cheese on top of that, and then bake that. And that was really good. So it's kind of a similar idea, though in that case, like what I was talking about, I think it would be better to use cooked rice before. That way you could more easily mix in your white sauce that you've preferably made from scratch, since it's super easy. And so any kind of casserole, I could see those going very good in to replace pasta if you wanted to. Maybe you're wanting to get more of a whole grain with lots, all that goodness that's in there. If anyone in the chat, or even if you're watching this on replay, has any other really great ideas that you would like to throw out there that you can use whole grains for, so that people can realize that there's more uses for whole grains if you're really wanting to start stocking up on 25 or 50 pound bags, and maybe you're not in a position where you can grind it yourself. Lots of great options. And I know there's more out there than what I just listed. So I know I thought of something else. Now, somebody sent me a video on making like Rice Krispies. And I realized why what I was doing wasn't working to make Rice Krispies. And I would assume the very same kind of thing could be done with any of your whole grains, is basically you parboil it or partially cook the grains so they're not fully cooked. Then you strain them out. You throw them in a hot skillet with either salt or sand, because I think that's how they do it in India. The sand idea I don't really like, because you'd have to be certain. You wouldn't want to be biting down on pieces of gritty sand, but salt would be a better idea. But anyway, you put that in a hot pan. I don't think, if I remember correctly, you're not using any oil. And that is what you use to heat it. So you're heating it and kind of swirling it around like you would with popcorn. And then the grains will start to puff and get a little toasty, but you got to work fast. And you got to hurry up and try to scoop them out and get them out of there. And then you put it like in a sieve, or like even like one of those mesh stainless steel strainers, and just try to get all that salt or sand out of there. And now you've got Rice Krispies. So I got to find that video somebody sent me where somebody was doing that. And I'm like, that is pretty cool. No wonder I couldn't get it right, because I had tried a few different ways of making like either a puffed rice or Rice Krispie, and it just wasn't working. But I would assume you could do the same with barley or whole wheat grains or anything like that. It'd be fun to try. So maybe throwing whole cooked grains into scrambled eggs. I do it with leftover rice all the time, but thinking wheat would be good too. I've never tried that. Interesting. I did not mention pilaf. Very good. Thank you. I remember I thought of it at one point, but I didn't get it written down. Thank you, Denise. There's a lot of these things that we, as people who are trying to be more self-sufficient, being more prepared, we don't always think about of the other uses of things. It's really kind of fun to try to look at what you have, what you're putting up in food storage, and realize that, okay, I can eat this if I need to, but what else can I do with this? What are some other necessary things I can do, or other types of recipes I can make? Just like with these whole grains, it does not have to just be for flours that you use in cookies, breads, cakes, and so on. It can be using in their whole form, or even their, throwing it into a blender and making a hot cereal out of. Have you mentioned grain bowls? Super easy, and they can be tailored to nearly any cuisine or taste. So I'm assuming that's like I didn't mention it, but I'm assuming that would be like because I hadn't really heard of that, but probably similar to where I was talking about making like a side dish or something where you can mix in, vegetables, herbs, spices, and whatnot. But maybe you're talking about it more as a main dish, I'm assuming is what you mean. You could throw in meat if that's what you're talking about. It'd probably most likely be beef or elk or venison, because we have all three of those. Mike always says, can't you make the same things the same way twice? No, of course not. What's wrong with you? Tell Mike I said, what's wrong with you? You gotta keep experimenting, because maybe there'll be that one time where you find something you like even better than the way you liked it before. And on top of that, it's the experimentation is also about, just like with the pot pies that I was talking about the other day. It's about, well, this is what I have. Like if it's that time of year, you got a lot of stuff coming in from the garden. You might want to use that stuff fresh. And you got a lot of zucchini coming in. You got onions, you got carrots, you got whatever, and you want to throw that in there. Maybe you've got sweet potatoes. And so you're experimenting with what's on hand, what's available to you, so that you can know if you like it in the event you got to be dependent on that, because that's all you have. And that's why it's always good to mix things up. And it was like that with the pot pie. I'm like, why have I never thought to, because, my seasoned salt has paprika in it, and I use paprika and other things, but I don't always think to use paprika. I'm like, I should throw some paprika in here. And it was so good. It was just so good. It was like, why don't I use that more? It's fun to experiment, because you're learning something new every time you do that, learning a different way to do something. And if you hate it, well, don't do it that way again. Anyway, I hope you all have a great rest of your day, a great rest of your week. Take care and God bless.